ngiyanyiwe impela. Nami ngoba ngimele lapha phezulu senoma ngesibindi sami nje.
Assignment njalo yini? Unosenza ukuthi shuwa ngalecture lathi nokufundisa ukuthi
It began as a calm Sunday in Newcastle, South Africa. A quiet afternoon beneath grey skies, the kind that promised nothing more than a passing shower. But within minutes, the sky turned violent. The first drops of rain became a torrent pounding rooftops like a drumbeat of warning. Then, without mercy, the heavens opened. The downpour was relentless, more than 3 inches of rain in just a few hours. Storm drains overflowed, gutters burst, and the streets of Newcastle vanished beneath a wall of fast-moving brown water. Cars were lifted off the ground and carried down the roads like toys in a stream. Storefronts shattered as floodwater crashed through the glass, and entire neighborhoods disappeared under the surge. But the worst came where few could escape, inside 2 care homes housing dozens of elderly and disabled residents. Within minutes, floodwaters rushed through hallways, climbing above waist level, sweeping away beds, furniture, and wheelchairs. Lights flickered, then went black. Nurses screamed for help as ceilings cracked, and rain poured in through the roof. Outside, chaos reigned. Power lines sparked, transformers exploded, and sirens wailed across the drowning city. Firefighters, paramedics, and local volunteers waded through freezing water, clutching ropes and flashlights, trying to reach the trapped before it was too late. What was once a peaceful community had become an ocean of panic, a place where every second meant the difference between life and death.
The Peaceville. And then if you're traveling on the N2 back to Durban, we have slow-moving traffic between the gate.
Late that Sunday afternoon, the storm struck with no warning. Dark clouds rolled across the KwaZulu-Natal skyline, turning day into night. Within minutes, sheets of rain slammed into Newcastle, drumming against windows and rooftops with a force that sounded almost unreal. In less than an hour, the city was overwhelmed. Over 3 inches of rain fell faster than the storm drains could carry it away. Water surged through streets like rivers unleashed. Sidewalks vanished. Manholes exploded under the pressure-shooting geysers into the air. Cars floated sideways down Allen Street and Bird Street, crashing into one another before disappearing beneath the current. The downtown district went under first, then the residential neighborhoods where homes filled with water up to the windowsills. At the La Gratitude retirement home, panic broke out as floodwater burst through the doors. Caregivers tried to block it with towels and furniture, but the current was too strong. Within minutes, the entire first floor was under 3 feet of water, and residents in wheelchairs were trapped. Lights flickered, alarms screamed, and the smell of wet earth and electricity filled the air. Just blocks away, another care facility suffered the same fate. A section of the roof gave way under the pounding rain, sending torrents of water into patient rooms. Ceiling tiles crashed down. Staff shouted over the roar of the storm, rushing to move the frail and bedridden to higher ground. For many, there was nowhere left to go. Outside, the city descended into chaos. Power lines snapped and sparked in the water. Transformers exploded like firecrackers in the distance. In the space of an hour, Newcastle, a town of 40,000, went from calm to catastrophe. The storm had only just begun, but for the people trapped inside those flooded homes, time was already running out.
Okay, what's happening? Wat gaan julle nou tou opsit? Wat gaan jy hom help?
As the flood swallowed the streets of Newcastle, chaos turned into panic. Dispatchers' radios lit up with emergency calls. People trapped in homes, power lines down entire neighborhoods, cut off by rising water. Within minutes, rescue crews from the KZN Private Ambulance Service, local firefighters, and community emergency units were deployed. What they found was a city already disappearing beneath the flood. Roads had vanished under waist-to-chest-deep currents, filled with debris and shattered glass. Rescue trucks stalled in the water, forcing responders to abandon their vehicles and push forward on foot. The current was strong enough to knock a grown man off balance, but still they moved carrying ropes, stretchers, and first aid gear through the storm. At the La Gratitude retirement home, the situation was desperate. Elderly residents were trapped in their rooms as the water climbed past their beds. Caregivers formed human chains to guide them through dark, flooded hallways, while rescuers outside broke down doors to reach those inside. The sound of the storm was deafening, pounding rain collapsing walls, and the crackle of electrical wires shorting out in the water. Across town, another care facility was collapsing under the same pressure. Roof panels gave way, sending torrents of water into patient rooms. The staff moved the frail and disabled onto tables and higher beds, doing whatever they could to buy time until help arrived. Some carried residents on their backs through waist-deep water, while others waded through the current with flashlights clenched in their teeth. As night fell, the city went dark. Power substations were underwater, cutting electricity to thousands. The only light came from rescue vehicles and headlamps reflecting off the water. Rescue teams worked non-stop, drenched, exhausted, but relentless, saving whoever they could, however they could. It wasn't just a storm anymore. It was a test of endurance, a fight against time, against exhaustion, and against the unstoppable force of nature itself.
Ang makulit tumuloy pa yung dalawang kotse na yan. Tumuloy pa.
As the magnitude of the disaster unfolded, local authorities and provincial leaders moved into crisis mode. The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs (EE-OGRADIE) declared an emergency across KwaZulu-Natal, deploying disaster management units, engineers, and rescue teams throughout the region. Command centers were activated overnight, operating on backup generators as heavy rain continued to batter the province. Inside Newcastle's municipal headquarters, exhausted officials huddled around glowing computer screens and drenched maps. Reports poured in from across the city: collapsed bridges, broken pipelines, washed-out highways, and entire neighborhoods cut off from communication. The city's infrastructure, already strained from years of neglect, had buckled under the storm's pressure. By midnight, the Newcastle municipality ordered a full lockdown of the Central Business District CBD. Main arteries like AI Street, Bird Street, Patterson, and Allen were declared impassable after the pavement cracked and lifted under the force of the current. Police placed barricades to block entry, while firefighters redirected what little traffic remained. Rescue teams focused on the care homes first, where the situation had turned critical. Provincial emergency officials, led by MEC Reverend Thulasile Buthelezi, issued public warnings through radio and social media, urging residents to stay off the roads, move to higher ground, and obey evacuation instructions. The tone was urgent, but calm, an effort to prevent panic as the storm intensified. Meanwhile, the South African Weather Service confirmed the worst. Another wave of heavy rainfall was approaching, with winds exceeding 40 mph and the potential for more flash flooding through Monday and Tuesday. Helicopters circled above the submerged city, scanning for stranded residents and marking drop zones for supplies. From the air, the devastation was staggering: entire blocks under water roofs, barely visible above the surface. The only color left in the gray landscape came from flashing emergency lights reflecting off the flood. For the people of Newcastle, the message from authorities was clear: this wasn't over yet. The storm was still alive, and it was coming back. When the sun finally rose over Newcastle, the storm had left behind a city that barely resembled itself. Streets once filled with life were now unbroken stretches of brown water, reflecting a gray, lifeless sky. Entire neighborhoods were underwater, some buried beneath 6 to 8 feet of floodwater. Cars sat stacked on top of one another, storefronts were gutted, and homes stood like hollow shells, their windows shattered curtains fluttering in the wet wind. The air smelled of diesel mud and destruction. Everywhere you looked there were signs of survival mattresses floating in driveways, children's toys drifting between power poles, and furniture tangled in trees. Families stood barefoot on rooftops, waving frantically at helicopters hovering overhead. Others used pieces of wood and plastic barrels to build makeshift rafts, paddling through the streets that had become rivers. Electricity was gone. Cell towers were down. Communication lines were jammed, and internet access had collapsed completely. The only way people could reach one another was through handwritten notes, shouts across rooftops, or social media posts sent from areas with temporary signals. WhatsApp groups overflowed with SOS messages, pleas for rescue reports of missing relatives, and desperate requests for clean water or medicine. But amid the wreckage, humanity rose from the chaos. Local volunteers using fishing boats and pickup trucks navigated the flooded streets to rescue trapped families. Churches opened their doors to anyone seeking shelter. Schools became emergency centers where volunteers distributed food blankets and bottled water. Strangers helped strangers, pulling them from the current or carrying children to safety. There were no barriers of class, race, or wealth, only people united by survival. The city may have drowned, but the spirit of Newcastle had not. In every small act of courage, every hand reaching through the water to help another, there was proof that even in the face of disaster, compassion endures.
Robbie Street and End Avenue in Centurion. This is currently
Even as rescue teams worked through exhaustion, the nightmare wasn't over. Meteorologists warned that another weather system was forming over the Indian Ocean, carrying enough moisture to unleash another wave of heavy rain across KwaZulu-Natal within the next 24 hours. The ground was already soaked. One more storm could send the region back underwater. Across Newcastle, emergency operations pushed forward without rest. Firefighters and paramedics cleared debris from the streets, while engineers struggled to restore electricity to thousands of homes still in darkness. Bridges sagged under the strain of floodwater, and roads that looked intact were crumbling underneath, ready to collapse at any moment. Power crews worked through the night, navigating dangerous currents to repair submerged substations. In the outskirts of the city, smaller towns faced their own battles. Landslides blocked access routes. Entire farming communities were isolated, reachable only by air. Supplies had to be airdropped by helicopter, bottled water, fuel, food, and medicine. The sound of rotors echoed across the valleys, a reminder that the crisis stretched far beyond Newcastle's borders. The South African Weather Service maintained its red alert warning of continuing rain through Monday and Tuesday, with possible thunderstorms and wind gusts up to 45 miles per hour. Authorities urged residents to stay indoors and avoid low-lying areas, fearing that any new rainfall could undo everything rescue crews had achieved. But as scientists analyzed the storm's data, a darker truth emerged. This wasn't just another natural disaster. It was part of a growing pattern. The same region had suffered deadly floods in 2022, and now history was repeating itself, stronger, faster, and more destructive. Climate experts warned that extreme weather like this was no longer rare. It was the new reality of a warming planet. For Newcastle, this was more than a flood. It was a message, a brutal reminder that nature's balance is shifting, and the storms of the future will not wait for anyone to be ready. As the rain finally stopped and the floodwaters began to sink back into the earth, Newcastle stood silent, broken, battered, but still standing. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days, shining down on a city that had lost almost everything, but refused to give up. Streets were buried in mud, cars were rusted and overturned, and the smell of soaked earth hung in the air. Yet everywhere people were rebuilding, sweeping out their homes, helping neighbors, and sharing what little they had left. This wasn't just a South African tragedy. It was a glimpse into what's happening all around the world. Storms getting stronger, floods rising higher, and the line between land and water disappearing faster with every passing year. For Americans watching from afar, it's impossible not to see the reflection. The flooded neighborhoods of Houston, the washed-out valleys of Vermont, the coastal towns of Florida, swallowed by storm surge. The story may take place thousands of miles away, but its warning is universal. What happened in Newcastle is more than a headline. It's a message written in water. A reminder that no city is too far, no nation too strong, and no community too prepared when nature decides to show its power. The next storm could come anywhere. And when it does, the question won't be if we're ready. It'll be how fast we can help each other survive. If this story moved you, hit like to support real stories that show the truth of our changing planet. Share this video to help others understand what these storms mean for all of us. Subscribe for more true stories of survival resilience and human courage around the world. And now we want to hear from you. Do you believe disasters like this are unstoppable forces of nature, or signs that our planet is changing faster than we can adapt? Are we truly prepared for the next storm, or still pretending it will never reach our own backyard? Your thoughts, your voice, and your awareness matter. Because every story like this is more than tragedy. It's a warning. And before the next storm begins, the world needs to listen.